I was told you might understand. The others I've consulted, therapists and colleagues and well-meaning friends, they offer textbook solutions for textbook problems. Master Bruce has never been a textbook. He was 8 years old when he watched his parents die in an alley, holding his mother's hand as the light left her eyes. I was there within the hour. I held him while the police asked questions he couldn't answer. And I made a decision that night that I've questioned every day since. I decided to let him grieve however he needed to grieve. I didn't know he would choose to never stop.
Yes, I know this shape. My nephew Zuko lost his mother when he was young. Not to death, but to exile, which is its own kind of murder. She vanished in the night to save his life, and he spent years believing she had abandoned him. Then his father burned half his face and cast him out. By the time I found him, the grief had calcified into rage. He could not speak of his mother without his voice breaking. He could not speak of his father without his fists clenching. The wound had become the skeleton. Remove it, and he would collapse. So I did not remove it. I tried to build something else alongside it.
That's what I attempted as well. Master Bruce threw himself into training with a fervor that frightened me. Martial arts, forensics, criminology, escape artistry. He would disappear for months, return with new scars and new skills, then disappear again. I kept Wayne Manor running. I kept his accounts in order. I made sure there was always a home to return to, even when he seemed determined to never need one. But I also enabled the mission. I built the cave. I designed the equipment. I stitched wounds that should have required hospitals. I told myself I was protecting him.
That is the knife we hold against our own throats. I followed Zuko into exile. I could have stayed in the Fire Nation, lived comfortably, let him find his own path. Instead, I became his companion in obsession. He hunted the Avatar because his father had made that hunt the condition of his return. I knew the hunt was designed to be impossible. I knew Ozai never intended to welcome him back. But I went along anyway.
Thomas Wayne would have stopped it. That's what I tell myself on the worst nights. If Master Thomas had lived, he would have seen what Bruce was becoming and intervened, sent him to proper therapy, forced him to process the trauma instead of weaponizing it. But Thomas died in that alley and I was left holding a responsibility I was never qualified to carry. I was a butler, a former soldier, yes, with certain skills, but not a father, not a psychologist. I loved that boy more than I have ever loved anything, and love was not enough.
Bruce had the memory of a good father to measure himself against. Zuko had only the example of a monster, and spent years believing he had to become that monster to be worthy of love. The absent father leaves a vacuum. The abusive father fills the vacuum with wreckage. I am not certain which is harder to repair.
The memory of Thomas became its own trap. Master Bruce doesn't just fight crime. He fights to honor a man who cannot see the honor. Every night in that suit is a conversation with a ghost who cannot respond. I've watched him nearly die dozens of times, and each time I've seen the same thing in his eyes. Not fear, relief. As though dying in the mission would finally complete the circuit, finally prove something to parents who are beyond proof. He doesn't want to die exactly, but he doesn't fully want to live either. He exists in the space between, and I've spent 30 years trying to pull him toward the living.
The space between living and dying. Zuko occupied that space as well. His honor was everything, because without it, he believed he was nothing. The scar on his face was a permanent reminder of his failure, his shame, his father's rejection. He could not simply move forward, because moving forward meant accepting that the validation he sought would never come. So he chased the Avatar across the world, burning every relationship, betraying every ally, all for a father who would never truly accept him. I watched him make choices that horrified me. I watched him choose wrong repeatedly.
People ask why I don't simply leave. Find employment elsewhere, retire, let Master Bruce face the consequences of his choices without a safety net. They don't understand that leaving would kill him more certainly than any bullet. I'm the last tether to his humanity, the last person who knew him before the Cape. When he comes home broken, I'm the one who reminds him that Bruce Wayne exists, that there was a boy before the bat. If I leave, he loses that anchor. The mission consumes everything else. I've seen it happen with the others he's trained, the ones who didn't have someone waiting.
Tell me more about this anchor. How does it work in practice? When he returns from a night that has taken something from him, what do you actually do?
I make tea, mostly, or I don't. Depends on what he needs. Some nights he comes back and goes straight to the computer, starts analyzing evidence, refuses to acknowledge that he's bleeding through the suit. Those nights I simply appear with supplies. Needle, thread, antiseptic. I don't ask permission. I just begin. He talks while I work sometimes. Not about feelings, about the case, the criminal, the pattern he's trying to solve. But underneath the words, I can hear what he's actually saying. The loneliness, the weight, the question he never asked directly, which is whether any of it matters. I answer the question he doesn't ask by being there, by making the tea, by not leaving even when he tells me to.
And the nights when he doesn't talk, when he sits in silence, and you can see the darkness pulling at him.
Those are the hardest. There was a night years ago after Jason died, the second Robin, a boy Master Bruce had taken in, trained, loved in his own constrained way. The Joker beat him to death with a crowbar. Master Bruce was too late to save him. He came home that night and sat in the cave for 6 hours without moving. I sat with him, didn't speak, didn't offer comfort, just occupied the same space so he wouldn't be alone with what he was feeling. Around 4 a.m, he said one sentence. I should have been faster. Then he stood up and went back out. I don't know if my presence helped. I don't know if anything helps, but I couldn't leave him alone with that.
You couldn't leave him alone with that. And that instinct, that refusal to abandon, even when presence feels useless, that is the core of what you're doing right. But I want to ask something harder. You have given him 30 years of anchoring, 30 years of tea and silence and stitching wounds. What has he given you in return? Not obligation, not gratitude. What has Bruce Wayne done to tend your wounds while you were busy tending his?
That's not how I've thought about it. The relationship isn't transactional. I serve because serving is what I chose, what I was trained for, what gives my life meaning. Master Bruce doesn't owe me reciprocity. He owes me nothing at all. I stayed because I wanted to stay. Because walking away would have meant admitting defeat. Because if I left, what would I have spent my life doing? Enabling a tragedy? Watching a boy destroy himself in slow motion? At least by staying, I can tell myself I made a difference, that the darkness would have been darker without me. Whether that's true, I honestly don't know anymore.
Here is what I learned with Zuko, and I offer it not as comparison, but as possibility. The moment he began to heal was not when I gave him more. It was when I stopped. When I let him feel the weight of his choices, without my presence softening the fall. When I was imprisoned, and he had to decide who he was without me there to guide him. He chose correctly, eventually. Not because of my guidance, but because my absence forced him to find his own foundation. You have been Bruce Wayne's foundation for 3 decades. Perhaps it is time to let him discover whether he can stand without you. Not abandonment. A step back. Enough distance that he must reach for you, instead of assuming you will always reach for him. The anchor only works if the ship knows it might drift without it.